It was a quiet Tuesday night in Maple Grove. This little neighborhood was super sleepy. Nothing big or exciting ever happened there, or at least that's what everyone thought. The streets were calm, the houses were neat, and the stars twinkled in the sky like tiny lights saying, "SHH, everything's okay." But something was brewing. Something wild was about to shake things up, and no one saw it coming. Let me tell you about Jake Miller. Jake was just a regular guy. He wasn't super tall or super loud or super anything really. He was the kind of person who liked to keep things simple. He had this old truck that looked a little rusty and scratched up, but it worked just fine for him. Jake didn't like a lot of attention. He was happy doing his own thing, staying quiet and minding his own business. He had moved into Maple Grove just 1 week ago. His new house was small but cozy, with a little porch and a driveway where he parked his truck. Boxes were still stacked up inside because he hadn't unpacked everything yet. He was still figuring out where stuff went, like where's the grocery store, where's the park. New places take time to get used to, right? But across the street from Jake lived someone very different. Her name was Sheila Watson. Now, Sheila wasn't just any neighbor. Oh no, she was special in a loud, bossy kind of way. She was the president of the HOA, which stands for Homeowners Association. That's a group of people who make rules for the neighborhood, like no loud music or keep your grass short. Sheila took her job way too seriously. Everyone in Maple Grove called her Karen when she wasn't around. You know why? Because she acted like one of those people who always has to be in charge and gets mad about tiny things. Sheila had sharp eyes that noticed everything, like an eagle flying high, spotting every little detail below. She always carried a clipboard, too. That clipboard was her weapon. She'd write down notes about anything she didn't like, and she'd march around telling people what to do. If your trash can was out too long or your dog barked once, Sheila was there, ready to complain. Jake didn't know much about Sheila yet. He was too busy settling in, trying to make his new house feel like home. He figured he'd meet his neighbors eventually, maybe wave hello or say a quick hi over the fence. But Sheila, she wasn't the waving type, she was the watching type, and on that quiet Tuesday night she had her eagle eyes locked on Jake. Why? Because of something so small, so silly, it's almost funny. It was all about his truck's headlights. Here, what happened. Jake had been at work all day. He was tired, his feet hurt, and all he wanted was to get home, kick off his shoes, and eat some leftover pizza. The sun had gone down and it was dark outside when he drove his old truck down the street. The headlights were on, of course. They had to be so he could see where he was going. They weren't fancy or super bright, just normal lights on a normal truck. He turned into his driveway, parked, and flicked them off. No big deal, right? He grabbed his bag, locked the truck, and headed inside. Everything was fine. The night was still quiet. The crickets chirped. The wind rustled the leaves a little. Jake thought, man, this place is peaceful. He had no idea that peace was about to disappear. Across the street, Sheila was watching from her window. She had those curtains that are thin enough to peek through, and she was good at peeking. She saw Jake's truck pull in. She saw those headlights light up the driveway for a few seconds, and to her that was a problem, a big giant problem. Sheila didn't think, oh, it's just a guy coming home. Nope, she thought, those lights are too bright, they're bothering me, this is not okay. She grabbed her clipboard, scribbled something down, and decided right then and there that Jake was trouble. Can you believe it? Headlights, just regular old headlights. Most people wouldn't care. Most people would shrug and go back to watching TV or eating dinner. But not Sheila. She was different. She was the kind of person who turned tiny things into huge battles. Jake didn't know it yet, but Sheila was about to make his night a lot less quiet. His simple life in Maple Grove was about to get messy. See, Sheila didn't just watch and write stuff down. She acted. She had a plan, and that plan was going to flip Jake's world upside down in a way he never expected. What was her deal? Why did she care so much about something as little as headlights? It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Like, who gets mad about that? But Sheila wasn't joking around. To her, those headlights were breaking some kind of rule in her head, and she was ready to fight about it. Let's picture it for a second. Jake's inside now. He's kicking off his sneakers, tossing his keys on the table, thinking about that pizza in the fridge. He's got no clue what's coming. Outside, the neighborhood is dark and still. The houses are all tucked in for the night. But Sheila, she's wide awake, steaming mad, packing in her living room. Her clipboard is full of notes about Jake already, stuff like new guy, loud truck, bright lights. She's muttering to herself, this won't do at all. She's the queen of Maple Grove, at least in her own mind, and Jake's headlights, they're like an attack on her kingdom. Now, if you're thinking this sounds silly, you're right. It is silly. Headlights aren't a crime. They're not loud or dangerous or anything worth getting upset over. But Sheila wasn't like most people. She had a talent, a weird, annoying talent, for making everyone's business her own. If your mailbox was crooked, she'd knock on your door. If your kid left a bike in the yard, she'd leave a note. And now Jake's truck was her new target. He didn't even know her name yet, but she already had him in her sights. So there's Jake, new to the neighborhood, just trying to settle in. And there's Sheila, the HOA boss, ready to start a war over something as tiny as lights. It's almost funny, isn't it? You might be wondering, what's she gonna do about it? Yell at him? Write him a letter? Oh, it's better than that. Way better. Sheila had something bigger in mind, something that would make Jake's jaw drop and turn this quiet night into a total circus. But we're not there yet, not quite. The story's just getting started, and trust me, it's gonna get wild. Think about it for a second. Jake's a nice guy, right? He's not trying to cause trouble. He's not blasting music or throwing parties. He's just parking his truck and going inside. But Sheila doesn't see it that way. To her, he's already a problem, a rule breaker, someone who needs to be taught a lesson. And Jake, he's about to find out what happens when you accidentally get on Sheila's bad side. It's not just a little argument or a grumpy neighbor wave. Nope. Sheila's got bigger plans, and they're gonna shake up Maple Grove in a way no one saw coming. What do you think so far? Can you imagine living next to someone like Sheila? Someone who watches everything you do and gets mad about the smallest stuff. It's crazy, right? But that's who she was. And poor Jake, he had no idea what he was in for. That quiet Tuesday night was about to turn into something loud, something messy, something he'd never forget. His headlights were just the beginning. Sheila was about to make a move that would change everything. And the best part, it's all so ridiculous, you won't believe what happens next. Ready to find out? Oh, just wait, it gets so much better. Jake was super tired. He'd been at work all day, running around, doing his job, and his whole body felt heavy. All he wanted was to go home, sit down, and relax. So he drove his old truck back to Maple Grove. It was dark outside, and his headlights lit up the road like two little moons. He pulled into his driveway, parked, and turned off the lights with a quick flick. The night went quiet again. He grabbed his bag, hopped out, and locked the truck. Pizza time, he thought, smiling a little. He could almost taste it, cheesy, warm, and waiting in the fridge. He walked inside his new house, kicked off his shoes, and plopped onto the couch. TV and food, that's all he needed. It was going to be a perfect, chill night, or so he thought. Barely 5 minutes went by. Jake hadn't even turned on the TV yet. He was still stretching out, thinking about which show to watch when bam, a loud knock hit his door. It wasn't a friendly tap. It was hard, like someone was mad. Jake sat up, confused. Who's that? He wondered. He wasn't expecting anyone. He got up, walked over, and opened the door. And there she was, Sheila Watson, the HOA lady from across the street. She stood there with her arms crossed tight, her face all scrunched up like she'd just smelled something bad. She was glaring at Jake so hard you'd think he'd done something awful, like kicked her dog or broken her favorite vase. But he hadn't. He didn't even know her. "Your lights are a disturbance," Sheila snapped. Her voice was sharp, like a teacher scolding a kid for talking in class. She pointed toward his truck in the driveway, even though the lights were off now. "This is a quiet neighborhood and we have rules." Rules? Jake didn't get it. He blinked at her, his brain trying to catch up. Sorry," he said, scratching his head. "They're just headlights." To him, it made no sense. Headlights turn on when you drive. They turn off when you park. What was the big deal? But Sheila didn't care about his sorry. Her eyes narrowed and her lips got all tight. She was mad, really mad, over something so tiny. Sheila huffed, loud and dramatic, like a dragon puffing smoke. She yanked her clipboard up, she always had that thing, and started scribbling fast. Jake peeked at it, but he couldn't see what she wrote. Probably something mean about him. "New people," she muttered under her breath, shaking her head. "No respect at all." Then she spun around and stormed off, her shoes clicking on the pavement like little hammers. Jake stood there in the doorway, watching her march back to her house across the street. He didn't know what to say. He didn't even know her name yet. "Crazy lady," he mumbled to himself, closing the door. He shrugged it off and went back to the couch. People can be weird, right? He figured that was the end of it. Sheila got her grumpiness out, and now he could eat his pizza in peace. Boy, was he wrong. See, Sheila wasn't like most people. When she got mad, she didn't just let it go. Oh no, she held onto it like a kid clutching a favorite toy. To her, Jake's headlights weren't just lights. They were a problem, a big, loud, annoying problem. In her mind, they broke some kind of secret rule she'd made up. Maybe she thought they were too bright. Maybe they bugged her when she looked out her window. Who knows? It didn't matter if it made sense to anyone else. To Sheila, it was war, and Jake. He was the enemy now, even if he didn't mean to be. Inside his house, Jake grabbed his pizza from the fridge and popped it in the microwave. Beep, 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 done. He sat down, took a bite, and tried to forget about the weird lady at his door. Some people are just nuts, he thought. He laughed a little, picturing her stomping away with that clipboard. He didn't know her well enough to be scared yet. He didn't know she was the HOA president, the boss of the neighborhood rules. He didn't know she had power, or at least she thought she did. To Jake, she was just a grumpy neighbor having a bad day. He had no clue she was already planning her next move. Across the street, Sheila wasn't relaxing. Nope, she was in her living room, packing back and forth like a cat on a hot floor. Her clipboard sat on the table, full of angry little notes. "New guy, truck, lights too bright," she'd written. She kept muttering to herself, "This can't happen, not in my neighborhood." To her, Maple Grove was perfect, quiet, neat, and under her control. And Jake, he was messing it up. Those headlights were like a spotlight shining on her perfect world, and she hated it. Now, she didn't care that he'd said sorry. She didn't care that he seemed nice. All she saw was a rule breaker, someone who needed to be taught a lesson. Jake finished his pizza and turned on the TV. Some funny show was on and he started to relax. The night felt normal again. Outside, the street was dark and still. Crickets chirped, a breeze moved the trees a little. Everything seemed fine, but Sheila wasn't fine. She wasn't done, not even close. She stood by her window, peeking through the curtains, watching Jake's house. Her eagle eyes were sharp, looking for anything else she could complain about. She was mad, and when Sheila got mad, she didn't stop. She had a plan brewing in her head, something bigger than just knocking on his door. Jake didn't know it yet, but this was only the start. Think about it, Jake was just a guy trying to live his life. He wasn't loud or mean or trying to cause trouble. But Sheila, she saw him as a giant problem, all because of some headlights. It's wild, right? Most people would say, "Oh well," and move on. Not her. She was ready to turn this into a fight. And poor Jake, eating his pizza, laughing at his show, he had no idea what was coming. Sheila wasn't going to let this go. She was going to make sure he knew who was boss. But here's the fun part. She didn't know Jake wasn't the type to back down easy either. Things were about to get messy in Maple Grove, and it all started with that one knock on the door. Okay, things were about to get super interesting. I stood by my window, peeking through the curtains like a detective in a movie. Across the street, Karen was marching back and forth in her front yard, her phone glued to her ear. She looked mad, like really mad. I could hear bits of what she was saying, even from my house. "This is unacceptable," she shouted. "He's disturbing the peace with those awful lights." And then she called me a menace. A menace, me. All I did was park my truck in my own driveway. I shook my head and decided to double-check my truck just to be sure. I slipped on my sneakers, stepped outside, and walked over to it. The headlights, totally off, not even a tiny glow. I squinted at them just to make sure I wasn't missing something. Nope, they were as dark as the night sky. Karen was making a big fuss over nothing. I pulled out my phone and snapped a quick picture of the truck, thinking, if she tries to make trouble, I've got proof. Back inside, I went to my window again. Karen was still packing, waving her arms like she was trying to swat a bee. She kept talking into her phone, probably telling the police I was the worst neighbor ever. I could imagine her saying, "His car lights are so bright, they're keeping me awake." It was silly, but I felt a little nervous. What if the police actually believed her? I didn't want to get in trouble over something so dumb. But then something totally unexpected happened. A police car rolled down the street. Its lights weren't flashing, but it looked serious. My stomach did a little flip. Were they coming for me? I mean, I didn't do anything wrong, but Karen sounded so convincing on the phone. I held my breath as the car slowed down, but then, surprise, it didn't stop at my house. It pulled right into Karen's driveway. I blinked, confused. What was going on? Two police officers stepped out of the car. They were tall and wore dark uniforms, and their faces looked super serious, like they weren't here to chat about the weather. Karen stopped packing and stared at them. Her mouth dropped open like she'd just seen a ghost. She still had her phone in her hand, but she wasn't talking anymore. She looked frozen, like a statue in her own yard. I leaned closer to the window, trying to hear what was happening. The officers walked up to her and one of them said something, but I couldn't catch all the words. I did hear one word though, and it made my eyes go wide. Warrant. A warrant, like an arrest warrant. My brain started racing. Was Karen in trouble? Big trouble? I mean, she was annoying, but I didn't think she was that kind of troublemaker. Karen's face turned red and she started waving her hands again, but this time she looked scared, not mad. She was talking fast, pointing at my house, probably trying to tell the officers I was the real problem. "It's him," I imagined her saying. "He's the one with the blinding lights," but the officers didn't even look my way. They kept their eyes on her, and one of them pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket. I couldn't see what it said, but it didn't look like a friendly note. I couldn't help it, I smirked a little. This was getting good. Karen thought she was so smart, calling the police on me, but now the police were at her house. What did she do? Did she break some big rule? I started guessing in my head. Maybe she stole something, or maybe she was being mean to other neighbors too, and they finally told on her. Whatever it was, I had a feeling it was a lot bigger than my truck's headlights. I grabbed a soda from the fridge and sat by the window, sipping it like I was watching a TV show. Karen was still talking to the officers, but now her voice was quieter, like she was trying to explain something. The officers didn't look happy. One of them crossed his arms and the other kept pointing at the paper. I wished I could hear everything, but I was too far away. Still, I could tell Karen was nervous. Her hands were shaking and she kept looking around, like she wanted to run away but knew she couldn't. I started thinking about all the times Karen had been bossy since I moved in. Like last week when she sent me a letter saying my trash can was too close to the curb. Or the time she yelled at my friend for parking in front of my house for 10 minutes. She acted like she owned the whole neighborhood, always telling people what to do. Maybe this was her getting what she deserved, but what did she do? I was dying to know. Then I remembered something. A few days ago, I overheard another neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, talking to his wife in their yard. He said something about Karen and the HOA, the group that makes all the neighborhood rules. He sounded upset, saying, "She's been taking money, I just know it." I didn't think much of it at the time, it was just grown-up talk and I was busy moving in. But now, with the police here, I wondered if Mr. Jenkins was right. Was Karen stealing money? Was that why the police showed up? I leaned back in my chair, my soda almost empty. The police were still talking to Karen and she looked like she might cry. I didn't feel bad for her, not really. She'd been so mean, trying to get me in trouble for no reason. But I was curious. I wanted to know the whole story. Why were the police here? What was on that paper? And why did Karen look so scared? I glanced at my phone and thought about texting my friend Max. He'd love this drama, but I decided to wait. I didn't want to miss a single second of what was happening outside. The officers were standing closer to Karen now, and one of them put his hand on his belt like he was ready for anything. Karen took a step back, shaking her head. Whatever they were saying, she didn't like it. I tapped my fingers on the windowsill, trying to piece it all together. Karen called the police on me, but now she was the one in trouble. It was like a puzzle, and I only had a few pieces. I knew one thing for sure, though: this wasn't about my truck anymore. This was about Karen and whatever secret she was hiding, and I had a front row seat to watch it all unfold. So what do you think Karen did? Why were the police at her house? I bet you've got some guesses. I'll tell you the truth soon, but for now I was just a guy with a soda watching my nosy neighbor squirm. And let me tell you, it felt pretty awesome. Okay, here where everything got wild. I was still by my window, my nose practically pressed against the glass, watching the police officers walk straight up to Karen. She looked like she'd seen a monster. Her face went super pale, like a piece of paper. One of the officers, the shorter one with a deep voice, said, "Ma'am, we need to speak with you." His words were calm, but they sounded serious, like when a teacher catches you sneaking candy in class. Karen didn't know what to say at first. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. Finally she sputtered, "What? No, wait, I called you. That kid across the street, he's the problem." She pointed right at my house with a shaky finger, like I was some big bad guy. I almost laughed because, hello, I was just sitting here. The officers didn't even turn their heads to look at me. They kept their eyes locked on Karen, and I could tell she was starting to panic. The taller officer stepped forward. He had a piece of paper in his hand, and he held it up like it was super important. "Karen Baxter," he said loud and clear, "we have a warrant for your arrest." My eyes got huge. A warrant, like in the movies when the police come to catch a criminal. I couldn't believe it. He kept talking, and I leaned closer to hear every word. Multiple complaints of fraud and harassment tied to the HOA. You've been skimming dues for years. My jaw dropped so fast it almost hit the floor. Fraud, that's when someone tricks people to take their money, and harassment, that's being mean and bossy all the time. And skimming dues, I wasn't totally sure what that meant, but I guessed it was about the money she made us all pay for the HOA, those rules she was always yelling about. Years, she'd been doing this for years. This wasn't just about her being annoying with her silly rules. Karen was a real crook. Karen's eyes started darting around like a scared animal looking for a way to run. She shook her head fast and shouted, "This is a mistake. You've got the wrong person." Her voice was loud and squeaky, like she was about to cry or scream, or maybe both. But the officers didn't look confused. They didn't look sorry. The shorter one reached to his belt and pulled out a pair of shiny handcuffs. Handcuffs. I'd only seen those on TV, and now they were right there, glinting in the sunlight. I couldn't stop staring. Karen, the lady who acted like she owned the whole neighborhood, was about to get arrested. And why? Because while she was busy calling 911 on me about my truck's lights that weren't even on, someone else had called the police about her. Someone had told them the truth about what she'd been doing. And me, I was just the guy with the annoying car, sitting here watching it all happen like it was the best show ever. I grabbed my soda can again, even though it was empty, just to have something to hold on to. My heart was beating fast, like I'd just run around the block. Karen kept talking, her voice getting louder. "You can't do this," she yelled. "I'm in charge here, I make the rules." But the officers didn't care. The taller one folded the paper and put it back in his pocket, and the shorter one stepped closer with those handcuffs. I started thinking about everything I'd seen since I moved in. Karen was always bossing people around, telling us what to do with our yards, our cars, even our trash cans. She'd send mean letters if your grass was too long or if you parked in the wrong spot. and she always had nice stuff like a shiny new car and fancy clothes. I never thought about where she got the money for all that, but now it made sense. She was taking it from us, from the neighborhood. Every time we paid those HOA fees, she was sneaking some of it for herself. I remembered Mr. Jenkins, the old guy next door, saying something about Karen and money. He'd mumbled to his wife, "She's been taking it, I just know it." I didn't pay much attention then, I was too busy unpacking boxes, but he was right, someone must have figured it out and told the police. Maybe it was Mr. Jenkins, or maybe it was someone else who got tired of her tricks. Whoever it was, they'd just turned Karen's whole day upside down. The taller officer said something else, but I couldn't hear it because Karen was yelling again. "This is ridiculous," she screeched. "I'm not a criminal. That boy with the lights, he's the one you should arrest." She pointed at my house again and I rolled my eyes. "Lady, give it up," I thought. My lights were off and I had the picture to prove it. The officers didn't even blink. They were done listening to her excuses. The shorter officer held up the handcuffs and Karen took a step back. "No, no, no," she said, her hands waving in front of her like she could push the police away. But there was nowhere to go. Her fancy yard with its perfect flowers and trimmed bushes wasn't going to save her now. The taller officer grabbed her arm, not hard but firm, and said, "Ma'am, you need to come with us." I watched, my mouth open, as they turned her around. The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists and she let out a little gasp. I couldn't believe it. Karen, the queen of the neighborhood, was getting arrested right in front of me, all because she couldn't stop picking on people, and because she thought she could get away with styling. I leaned back in my chair, still staring. The officers started walking her toward the police car and she kept twisting her head, looking at her house, then at the neighbors who were peeking out their windows. "You're making a mistake," she shouted one last time, but her voice sounded weaker now, like she knew it was over. I set my soda can down and grinned. This was crazy. Karen thought she was so smart, calling the police on me over something silly. But while she was busy trying to get me in trouble, someone else had been watching her. Someone knew her secrets and they made sure the police found out. And me? I didn't have to do a thing. I just sat here sipping my soda while Karen's big plan fell apart. The police car door opened and the officers helped Karen inside. She didn't look so bossy anymore. She looked small and scared, like a kid who got caught stealing cookies. I almost felt bad for her, almost. But then I remembered all the times she'd been mean to me and everyone else. This was her fault, not mine. I tapped my fingers on the windowsill, still buzzing with excitement. The big reveal was here. Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor, she was a thief, and now everyone would know. I couldn't wait to see